How is everybody today? Yes, I am here. I'm doing awesome today. This is excellent. It's going to be weird because I'm actually in a pretty good mood, which, from the perspective of talking about what we're going to talk about, probably going to make me come off a little bit as a sociopath. Yet here we are because life's going to happen whether you want it to or not. So you might as well enjoy the ride. Now, we got the big Luha going on, Aloha snack bar back there behind me. This is Hawaii. Now, reason why I think this is particularly interesting today is because Hawaii wasn't actually a state until 19. Hawaii was still just a territory. It was a military base for the United States Navy, naval base sitting out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. We'd actually annexed it, right? Reagan crack, you got it. We'd actually annexed it back in 1898, middle of the Spanish-American Wars. Spain, America. We were fighting over the Philippines, Manila. Everything out there in the South Pacific. Because I think we'd actually acquired the Philippines for a brief period of time while we were out there too. So here we are, 1898, the Banana Wars. We acquired Hawaii as a territory through gunboat diplomacy, where we actually went in and kidnapped the Queen of Hawaii and said, "You are now territory," in violation of what was then considered international law, because Hawaii was a recognized nation. It was a recognized kingdom with a queen. Now, as far as the big luau goes and a lot of other things that go on with it, we got an awful lot of things going on in the world today that are of particular interest. Reason why is because Moscow. Alexander Dugin, who is a primary ally of Putin, he's part of the team who planned and arranged the invasion of the Ukraine. Okay. Now, Alexander Dugin, he's an authoritarian. He coordinated, he planned, he wanted to make sure everything happened in Ukraine in a very specific way. And of course, Ukraine didn't happen the way he wanted it to. Well, Ukraine didn't happen the way anybody wanted it to. NATO wasn't able to provide enough to actually fight back as effectively against the Russians. And the Russians didn't put in enough firepower to actually take over Ukraine in a timely, effective manner that would have been nice for the UN to simply accept and say, okay, it's yours. Okay, so now, Alexander Dugin, he was the guy who actually coordinated that from Russia's side. His daughter was assassinated in Moscow via a car bomb. Now, there's a couple different things why this is particularly important, because an awful lot of us realize that, World War I, the Duke Ferdinand moment, this was the time in history that we decided was the catalyst for World War I. The assassination of a Duke. The friend of a friend of a friend who is very, very well placed, who is very upset that activists, violent activists, took time out of their day to make sure his friend died for the sins of the aristocracy, in 1915, 19, whenever it was. Okay, now here we are. We have very violent activists, Ukrainian activists, who claim that they were the ones who successfully accomplished the car bomb that assassinated Alexander Dugin's daughter in Moscow. Okay, now what this represents as far as the risk, the threat, assassination of a major politician's family member in the capital city of one of our current global empires. Okay? By global, we have three effective empires in the world right now. Let's just go ahead and call it what it is. We have the American Empire, we have the Russian Empire, we have the Chinese Empire. Okay. Technically, we got the Indian Empire as well. They're not as big, they're not as well known, they're not as involved in global politics, despite the fact that we continue to see what I'd call the Indian diaspora, as we continue to see Indian workers come to the United States in order to work. Tech workers, information workers, even to a certain degree, service, bring a family over, get them involved in other industries besides the tech, bring them over on family visas, you know. But for the most part, what we are dealing with is the now trilateral powers of the global empires. We have the United States and its allies, which are essentially every place we have military troops in the world. We have Russia, which is trying to consolidate or reconsolidate what was once the USSR, and that includes re-annexation of Ukraine at the moment. Now, 2014, we were dealing with the issues of Crimea, the declarations of independence from Ukraine of the Donbass region, in which two countries declared that they were no longer, or that they were independent of the Ukrainian government that was responsible for their region following the breakup of the USSR. Back in Gorbachev and Reagan days, yes, era. Reagan crack. And here we are, looking at three empires, and we are having a turf war over Ukraine. NATO wants it. Russia wants it. China is really interested in the outcome of who gets Ukraine, because the outcome of what happens in Ukraine decides the fate of Taiwan. See where I'm going with this? World War III. We're on the verge. The reason why we're talking Aloha Snack Bar, the Big Luau, folks. Yes, we are. Now, whether or not the Alexander Dugin family assassination is going to be the Duke Ferdinand moment of World War III remains to be seen. We see the precludes. There were a number of different moments that precede every significant global conflict, or conflict between empires, where you start to see weaknesses in the way the empire manages to do business, the way the empire conducts itself, the way we look and watch and see things develop around the world. Previous incidences, a lot of these areas were still relatively localized. The Duke Ferdinand moment in the Balkans, that was still a European thing. Even World War I, the Great War, it was a European war. Middle East, it was between the European colonies and the European nation states. World War II, it's interesting because somehow we ended up a little bit more global. The Japanese Empire, the Chinese Empire, the British Empire, the German Empire, or what was left of it, the rebuilding of it, the recreation of it, and of course the American Empire, which we'd already acquired many territories around the world: Cuba, Puerto Rico, Hawaii, Manila, or the Philippines. We were stationed in several other areas around the world. So pay attention to what's going on with global politics, because if we actually have political assassinations going on in Moscow by Ukrainian agents, things are going to get real hairy real fast, because the oligarchs do not like having their families taken out. And when it comes to resolutions on issues like that, collateral damage becomes a non-issue, because this is family. Well, let's face it, you and I do not matter to the oligarchs, whether the oligarchs are Russian, whether they're American, whether they're Chinese or Ukrainian or any other brand of narcissistic autocrat that we've granted an unreasonable degree of power to. So, watch out. Remember, what you do here isn't going to change what they do there until they want you to do something for them over there. So when you start hearing the songs, over there, yeah, it's time to remember that the things you need to do is stay the fuck home. When the recruitment songs start, when the draft starts, in order to make sure that they have enough manpower, make sure that they have enough young men to go over there and die for their cause. You and yours aren't part of that mess. Because, let's face it, it's going to be a big mess. And the more and more we go down this particular path, the more and more it looks like it's inevitable. People want war. People want dead young men for the glory of the nation. You better, folks. You better. Conscientious objectors, regardless of the country, figure out where they're coming from. Make sure they're going someplace where that's not what they have to do. Okay. One of our big other issues, let's go ahead and talk about the other issues. Student loan forgiveness, it's big in the news today. Yes, it is. Roughly $1 trillion in debt is expected to be forgiven by the federal government. Now, we all know this isn't actually a bailout for the people because the people aren't in a situation to actually do anything with the bailout. You know, that $50 a month that's going to your specific student loan really is just a drop in the hat as far as your personal expenses go on a day-to-day basis. Okay. How you doing, Steve? Great to see you. Great to see you. Dolores, again, remember, folks, you're watching now. Like, share. Let the people know what you're watching, what you're caring about. Share so that we can talk about these and make sure that everybody knows what's going on. Like, share Kerberos Media. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Let your friends subscribe to the channel. Yes, and this is what the oligarchs want, man. I talk. It's the you'll have no privacy, you'll own no property, and have no more rights, and you'll be happy. Happy, 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 happy. Yes, because that's what the oligarchs want. And you'll eat the bugs and like it. Yes, you will. You know, if you happen to be out in Hawaii, we know it's all spam. I know you like the spam. Yes, we do. That big luau with the big roast pig, the barbecue pit. Luau pulled pork. Yeah. Good stuff, right, Manna? Good stuff. And yes, this is the No More Rights and Be Happy channel. Yes, 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 yes. So we all know that, you know, that $50 a month in student loan forgiveness really does not make a single dent. You know, not even the tiniest dent in your month to month expenses, your living requirements. You know, it's just this continuous burden that you got $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 in debt that's hanging over you with a constant drain of $50 a month for the rest of your life. You know, when your cost of living is somewhere in the neighborhood about $5,000 to $6,000 a month, you know, you're talking rent, you're talking car, you're talking gas, you're talking, you know, commute time, wear and tear, the uniform, the clothing that you have to wear to work so that you can look pretty for the Zoom meetings. Yes. I can understand that. Definitely can understand that. Product placement, folks. Product placement. How you doing, James? Appreciate it. Thanks for stopping in. Um, okay, so we know that that $50 a month that's saved by them forgiving you, $1 trillion in debt really doesn't make that big of a difference in your day-to-day life. It doesn't make a big a difference in your month-to-month life. And that 50 or $100 a month, that's a $1,200 loan credit that you get a write-off at the end of the month. Now that's actually interesting because if they forgive you your debt, which they plan on doing, and they take that $100,000, or $40,000, and just gift you that to pay off your student loans. Uh, that's actually income, folks. That gift to pay off your student debt is going to be credited to the IRS as income. You will have made $60,000 this year. That's going to be taxed because it went directly to your loan and you never saw any of that money. Now you're going to be taxed on $60,000, which boosts you up into which tax bracket? Well, you're still living on $25,000 a year. Be prepared for that screw. It's going to be a big screw, particularly if you still have debt. Because I don't know too many people who are living on $30K a year that are all of a sudden going to be able to pay the taxes on $100K income because their student loan was paid off. Oh, Mike, yes, follow Saigon. We can come back to the war issue a little bit later on. Right, James fits right into your 110K annual tax exemption. Okay, now we all know that the bailouts, the tax, the student loan, it's not a fix for you and I. The $50 a month, it's not a fix for us. What this is it's a bailout for the banks. It's a bailout for the United States Department of Education. This is the subsidy, the bailout, the stimulus. All of a sudden, all across America, there's going to be, 50 million people who all of a sudden have an extra $50 a month to spend, $100 a month to spend. Meanwhile, the banks get this one-time injection of $1 trillion. The Department of Education and its affiliate organizations that hold your debt will get an injection of $1 trillion. You know what that $1 trillion is going to be used to do? It's going to be used to buy up housing all across the nation during this next housing downturn. Okay, we already see it. I think it's, what is it, BlackRock, Blackstone? I keep getting those two mixed up. And several other organizations that are responsible for the privatization of Social Security, the 401ks, this lump sum of all the retirement packages of all of the people in the United States who are contributing to these fund management programs. Well, all of these fund management programs that you have lent the use of your money intended for your retirement is going to be used to buy up housing all across the United States. Which means that when you are ready to retire, all of that money that they have made for you will be used to pay the rent on the house you will live in until you die. Yeah, so much for retirement plans actually being for your retirement. Turns out it's just a big Ponzi scheme. Ponzi scheme that took 50 years to reveal itself, yet here we are. You will own the house you live in because you've invested in the organization that does own the house you live in. You'll just never get the return on the money. And yeah, Mike, Christian conservatives will be celebrating the Jubilee year tonight. Yes, it is Jubilee. It is the Great Reset. All debt absolved. All debt absolved. Just one big injection straight into the banks. And what that means, you'll own nothing, including what you think you own now. Absolutely. You'll eat the bugs and like it. It's going to be awesome, man. It's going to be awesome. Yeah, and property taxes, fail to pay the house, miss 1 month on the mortgage, miss 1 year on your property taxes, and you're renting. Thank you, Sandy. Appreciate it. Share, everyone. Reminder, everyone, share. Okay, so student loan forgiveness. We all know that's not to benefit us. That's to benefit the banks. That's to benefit the oligarchs. Reason why is because we aren't getting that big injection of money. The banks are, the retirement fund, the fund managers, your hedge fund managers on the New York Stock Exchange, your commodity exchange manager, dealers, in Chicago, your bankers, Bank of America, the consolidation of all the banks into the central fund, the International Monetary Fund. Yes, please, Steve, remind everybody, smash the like button, like, and share again. Reason why is because some of this stuff's going to be important to some of you guys as you continue to go along. Okay, the end is nigh. It may not be as bad as you think it is. Reason why is because I don't think they have as good a control over the Great Reset as they think they do. Because let's face it, when 300 million Americans are rendered broke and destitute, there's nobody left for them to steal from. A lot of us out there looking at bug meals. Eat the crickets, folks. Eat the crickets. Yeah, a lot of us aren't going to be real enthusiastic about eating crickets. An awful lot of their enforcers aren't really going to be able to go around. And that's interesting, Mike. That's interesting. The idea of buying rubles and silver. Rubles and silver, you still have to be able to secure in some way. Okay, when you start looking at alternatives, you still have your labor, you still have your body, you still have the things that you can create, the skills that allow you to build, make, manage, the things that allow you to create property. Because that's what property is, stored labor. Things I create that I can sell are property. That's how I store my labor so that I can sell my labor in a lump sum to somebody else. Let's go back real free market roots here, because if I am trading goods, then I'm capable of creating. Yeah, thank you, Sandy. Appreciate it. We don't have to store it. Okay, and when rubles and silver, that's stored. How do you store that in a way that's secure in a world that's now, I don't want to say anarchy, because anarchy isn't what we think. Simply the absence of rulers is not a bad thing. 99.9% of what we do on a day-to-day basis, we do without consulting the state. We do without consulting the police. We do because we don't need them. But 99.9% of the stuff we do. We don't need to ask permission to have a consensual business relationship. Okay. And that's one of the things you bring up. How many people are only controlling their violent predilections because they still have something to lose? Okay. And that's one of the things. That's one of the things that I see holding an awful lot of people back with regards to the Great Reset is what are you willing to do when you have nothing left to lose? Okay. Right now, we still look at family. We still believe we own property. We still believe that the things that make our day-to-day life comfortable, are real, and that if we are bad, these things can be taken away from us. With the understanding that they can be taken away from us. If we're deprived of a job, we're no longer able to pay for the roof over our head. We're no longer able to pay for the internet. We're no longer able to pay for our precious little cell phones. We're no longer able to maintain the communication with the people we love, with the things we enjoy doing. We lose access to everything that currently makes us who we are. And once we do that, freedom is nothing left to lose. You no longer have the chains binding you to the things that are. All that you have left is what you own, and that is you. They'll try and take that too. They'll try and tell you that you no longer own you. They've been conditioning us for that for a long time. Our reproductive rights, they've tried to take from us. You know, you must have a child. You can't have a child. China, you can only have one child. You know, James, let's go ahead and talk about this. You think your silver and gold will pay for someone else's food and water? Well, the thing is food and water can be created through labor. Okay, matter of fact, that daily has to be renewed through labor. The food you create, whether you're harvesting eggs from chickens, whether you're harvesting the chickens themselves for protein, whether you're raising, grass-fed cattle, out on your back 40, whether or not you actually have managed to secure enough money in order to run the tractors that plow the field. This is labor that's converted into food. This is water that is managed by diverting dams, rivers, so that you can irrigate, so that you can actually fill the aquifer, so that the pump, the well that you use in order to pull water out. The ones that aren't owned by the city because of the city treatments. And here we go, Steve. I don't know what to invest in right now. Yeah. We are in the upside down moment. We don't know what will make money. We don't know what will lose money. We don't know what the oligarchs will invest in and undercut us in order to take a larger percentage of what we believe we own and turn it into something they claim for themselves. Like I said, Mike, antique farm equipment, stuff that doesn't have the flip switch, like the John Deere equipment that's currently being jailbroke. I know jailbroke is specific to Apple systems, but the stuff that's the proprietary software that exists on the John Deere equipment in order to keep the John Deere equipment has currently been broken by several organizations around the world, most recently an American one. But the Ukrainians and the Russians have actually been sending that information out for quite a while so that U.S. farmers can fix their own equipment without waiting weeks upon weeks while their produce rot in the field. Those guys suck, man. Those guys suck hardcore. You need your own server suite, Mike. You don't actually need to be wired into the internet to have all of that stuff. You can literally download it into your own, and as long as you got enough solar power that you've been able to hook up to generate the electricity to keep those hard drives actually running up when you need access to the meta library, because literally I think it's 2 terabytes to download Wikipedia right now, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less. So you got Wikipedia, you can go through, download the key YouTube videos that you need for personal repair, the jailbreaks for running against John Deere equipment that's currently set up to run on TechFront. That way you're not dependent upon the state to make sure that you can access that. But yeah, antiques, good investment. Reason why is because there's no electronics in them. You can fix them yourself with a YouTube video. A little spritz of that, a little spritz of that, the other, and that gas single engine rototiller now works as well for you. And you can actually convert it over to biodiesel fuel or even create an alcohol engine out of it. Ah, yes, the Slavs. Slavs, yes. This goes back to one of those World War II, maybe it was even World War I, the World War I racist terms, the jerry rigging. Jerry rigging, because that's what the Germans did. The Germans jerry rigged. Old Jerry, he jerry rigged that stuff to make sure it worked. Yeah, so anytime you had a German, where all that jerry rigging they were doing, making sure that stuff worked, making sure that things were in place and they were going to happen. Slavs, Germans, yeah, they all did a certain amount of that OG redneck engineering back in the day. Now, let's go ahead and talk this issue here. State trans laws, the anti-trans laws that are going around. Marjorie Taylor Greene has put one out. And this one's a particularly vile sort. Reason why is because she's actually calling for the reversal of several of the trans surgeries that have occurred. Literally going in and saying, yeah, I know you were a woman and now you're a man, but you got to go back to being a woman because the state says so. Okay, now, I understand to a certain degree wanting children to be of an age where they can recognize the choice that's made in going through gender reassignment surgery, irreversible gender reassignment surgery, because literally we can't, some things we haven't developed the technology to reverse yet. This isn't one of those things where you go in and get a tattoo and you don't like it and you just go in and start the tattoo removal process. This is you've gone in and had major portions of your body recreated, reimagined, rebuilt. Okay. And when we start taking a look at what's going on with the violations of bodily autonomy, because that's really what this is. This is the state saying it knows better about who you are and who you want to be and how you want to express yourself through the balance of your life than you do. This is the thing. Appeals to the state may go your way today, but the pendulum swings without regards to feeling or justice. It's just going to swing. It's going to swing left. It's going to swing right. Steve, man, we're going to be down to trading bullets and whiskey, and somebody's going to want a Wayne Gretzky original Topps hockey card. Somebody's got to have an awful lot of extra bullets and whiskey in order to really justify. Yeah, I mean, I get it, but I think you're right. Avoid the sports memorabilia. But yeah, getting back to this issue of the appeals to the state, especially with regards to individual and personal bodily autonomy. Okay, now there are an awful lot of things that we say, I was born this way. Okay. Now, in popular science, not the stuff that we get on the day-to-day stuff. Like back in the 1950s, we had all of these pop science experiments that were run on animals. The concept of the alpha dog, the rational addict theory of sticking a rat in a cage all alone with a bottle full of opium and a bottle full of water, and the rat would OD itself. The idea of creating major mouse cities, and then just watching the speed, how many generations it takes a mouse society in what started as a mouse utopia to turn into a mouse dystopia, where so many of the things that you see happening in that mouse community are being replicated in the things we see today. The capital city, the lack of responsibility, the departure from, the fact that we no longer need certain things in order to survive, or that in order to survive, we don't have access to the things that allow us to define our own future. We don't have the skill sets to define our own future. And we become dependent upon a system that is abusive of our psyche, it's abusive of our bodies, in order to continue to survive. And when we start actually reaching a point where we devolve into, extreme hedonism, where we no longer care about the perseverance of the species, the perseverance of the community, the perseverance of the culture, the perseverance of the society, simply because we have become too crowded and too dependent upon a system that was designed to be a perfect utopia for a select few. Okay. Now, I'm not going to say you do not deserve the right to be who you want to be. You do. You have the right to learn everything you need to learn in order to be what you want to be able to take care of yourself in the absence of a community, and to be able to contribute to a community as part of a community. You deserve the right to choose all of those things for yourself. You deserve the right to decide for yourself what your representation is going to be, what your choice in freedom, what your choice in liberty, what your choice in personal expression is going to be. The things you consent to do, the things that are part of your morality, the things that are part of who you are on the most basic level, the core level. Right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Those are yours. And the state should not be interfering with it. Because when the state interferes with that personal level of aspect, you end up with the social dystopias that kill those rat communities, that kill the mouse communities. Because your will has been suborned by the state. Monoculture is destructive. Persecution of divergence is destructive. So you can actually reverse that and bring it around and start taking a look at what it is. Not to a society of mediocrity through forced conformity, but the pursuit of individual excellence through the invitation of diversity. That's how we build shit, man. That's how we make shit happen. Not by being who the state wants us to be. Not by fitting into some little block, that some authoritarian has decided we need to fill, because if we're any different, it's going to make them uncomfortable. No. Okay. Honestly, most of the women that go into hard labor, that actually go into careers like construction, go into careers like, logging, mining, they don't bother turning themselves into men to do that. They just decide one day they're going to go be a lineman. They're going to go be a truck driver. They're going to go be a logger. They're going to go out on the ships and actually do deep sea crab thing, and salmon with the trawlers, out in the Alaskan Bay. They don't bother turning themselves into something else in order to go do that. Okay. There are other reasons. I'm not going to go into those reasons because I don't experience those reasons. I haven't lived those reasons. I can't speak to the reasons those women have decided that they don't want to be women in our society anymore. That's really what we got to think about. What are we doing that makes women not to want to be women in American culture and American society today? It's your homework, folks. What makes women not want to be women in America? Um, I don't know, Mike. I'm not going to tell them how many rounds you got out there. Don't want to advertise. Let them know. I'll let you do that. And Mike, yeah, absolutely right. I mean, this is real. This is the reality of freedom, real freedom. You know, the ability to decide for yourself without the bubble wrapping, to live for yourself, knowing that you no longer have the law defining your left and right limits. You know, what does life look like? What does choice look like? You know, we've been given the binary, we've been given, the left and the right. What about the middle? What about the rest? How do we rewild America? How do we recreate ingenuity? How do we re-welcome diversity? How do we do that in a way that's safe enough for most of us? Um, right? Brandy, two procedures on that list due to female issues, family history of cancer. You know, the mastectomy, the double mastectomy, for preventative measures for cancer. You know, now the thing is, mammaries produce milk. They don't actually define female functions unless you say that making milk for babies is a definitive requirement in order. You know, most Americans don't do that these days. The last time we as Americans really said, if you don't breastfeed, you're not a woman. Yeah, we've sort of done away with that for a while now. But these are, things that we need to talk about. Are some of these things on these lists, on these anti-trans laws, things that should be your choice, your medical choice for your personal health, whether psychological, physical, spiritual, your body, your choice. It's that way for a reason. And it's between you and your physician and your psychologist to define what's best for you, not for the state to write a universal policy that forces conformity and mediocrity on America. We need to get past that, folks. Inclusion, welcome of diversity. It's America built in the last 2 decades. A lot of it's a repeated stuff we built in the 4 decades before that. Just copy paste, copy paste, copy paste, copy paste. We got nothing new. And Brandy, you've done construction. You don't have to go get a sex change in order to get involved in male careers. Most of it is just getting past the male bigotry of the fact that you got tits. And no, I can't blame you, Joe, or I can't blame you, Brandy. I cannot blame women for not wanting to be women in America today. And truth is this is something that's been a problem in American history, since the beginning. The idea that women, would go to the county clerk and just have themselves declared men so that they could have rights. The right to not be forced to get married. Yes, that was a thing back in the day. Women would just get themselves declared to be men At least until we made that impossible. Yeah, there was a time when you could just go say, I'm a man now. And then all of a sudden you'd have all the rights of being a man. You'll find yourself another spinster to live with. Yeah. Right? Right. Yeah, that's gonna be a lot longer than the one I got for today. More time than I got for today. Um, yeah, and a lot of us we're losing our ways out. They're doing things to restrict our travel. They're doing things to keep us in. Borders are supposed to keep governments limited and not limiting people. And here we are in a situation right now where they are using the borders to keep us locked in. We have states right now that are talking about uh, limited travel restrictions, quite possibly requiring you to take a pregnancy test before you can leave a given state. Yeah, we got people talking about that, man. Right to travel based on whether or not you're pregnant. Um, Relieved of the burden of natural law. Yes, and there are some people out there who think that it's really awesome, really fantastic. That you will never, ever, ever have to think for yourself again. People who want that. Not me. I hope not you. I like to think a lot of you would like to continue to have choices. Something more than whether or not you're having crickets or pasta tonight, or whether or not you even want the crickets in your pasta. Um, yeah, Brandon, this is the issue with medical choice. The fact that you, as a young woman, under the age of 30, in prime reproductive range, could quite possibly have ovarian cancer, and they will not allow you to have your ovaries removed because it's more important to the state that you be able to have a child than it is you survive middle age. And yes, there are states that right now are considering laws that are that dangerous to the health of women, despite the fact that they consider us to be overpopulated at the moment, which is, again, really rather bizarre. Mike, one of the things you bring up here, and this is one of those things that you actually talk about fairly often, the Hegelian dialect, the us versus them, bus versus boom, the opposites, the choices, either the left or the right, you know, um, fiat currency backed by ultra violence, and yeah, we're trapped in a cage. We're trapped in a cage. We're trapped in a trap like a wild animal. And some of us are going through the process of chewing our leg off to escape the trap. Um, while others of us are chewing on the person who is stuck in the trap. The idea of the alpha dog, the alpha male. Yeah, I don't know who's out there that really believes in the concept of the alpha, but the pop psych associated with the alpha mentality, okay, that was generated by observing wolves in a cage. Wolves that were not able to go out and hunt for themselves, wolves that were not able to go out and provide for themselves, wolves that were not able to take care of themselves. Okay. Alpha dog, alpha male. All that says is you're the top bitch in the cage. Identifying as an alpha male, you're just the meanest son of a bitch. You're not a provider. You're not a creator. You're just a thief. A violent thief that steals from the rest of the community. That's what the alpha was. Just the meanest SOB in the cage. Yeah, some of these things, and Steve, a lot of us here, a lot of people who are familiar with me, we're going to agree on this. Your body, your life, your choice. These are not things that we see. Sandy, tubal ligation. Thing is even though it's not on the list for the major Marjorie Taylor Greene, they have tried in several states to put that on the list of prohibited abortion procedures. Time and time again, they get enough ignorant legislators to actually suggest that tubal ligation can be removed and transplanted. Yeah, we all know that's BS. I mean, I suppose it could if you got millions of dollars and an on-staff surgeon capable of handling the transplant. Most of us do not have that, which means the tubal ligation got sorry. I was thinking ectopic pregnancy, but the tubal ligation, and that's one of the other things. An awful lot of hospitals, a lot of the healthcare systems, once Nixon actually changed the nonprofit to the for-profit system with healthcare, a lot of the nonprofit church-ran organizations, Catholic-based organizations that ran the major churches, like here, we have St. Luke's and St. Al's. Okay, St. Al's has a religious prohibition that will not allow their physicians to actually perform elective abortions. As a result, a lot of the Catholic beliefs and faiths, these physicians have policies that are based on the hospital policy, which is based on church policy, Catholic policy, and they want to make sure that, well, you're a woman, you're reproductive, you should be making children for the greater glory of God, and we're not going to give you the choice not to do that. So you end up with an awful lot of physicians that look at you and say, well, I want, somebody else to sign off on your choice about your body, like your significant other, your life partner. Yeah. So in a lot of those cases, they don't actually need to put tubal ligation on the list because young women are already being denied tubal ligations by a lot of physicians. What else we got? Yeah, James, don't. It's not a good idea right now. And yes, woman's pregnant. It's her own business. Medical emergencies, situations like that. 40, 30 eggs, ovaries are still intact with the tubal ligation. You can still have eggs harvested for in vitro fertilization at a later point. You can have, some sort of what's the new thing they got coming out with, the gene splicer thing. Yeah, where you can go in and actually have your baby, designer babies. Right, James. How bad does it got to be in other countries that, as bad as it is here in America right now, people still want to come here? That's because those countries are still subject to U.S. foreign policy, which means if you're brown, you're probably going to get bombed. And yeah, absolutely right, Mike. Alpha only exists in captive animals. Walk-on part in the war for a lead role in a cage. Yes. Because once you're in the Army, once you're in the Marines, you're just another one animal following the lead of another. Being told which way to go. Hunt and kill. Or die. Right? In addition to blocking tubal ligations, they also block vasectomies. I actually saw an interesting comic skit on that once. The young crazy friend who says, you know what, I'm too crazy to actually go out and have children. I think I'm going to go get a vasectomy. And all of his friends are going, good idea. Only problem is because he goes in at 21 and he says he wants a vasectomy, they look at him and go, you're a little young. We're going to have to give you a psych test to see whether or not you're actually capable of making that decision for yourself. And, excuse me, but if he's actually too crazy to request his own vasectomy, why would you want him having children? CRISPR, yes, CRISPR. That's it. All the CRISPR babies. You can go out and have CRISPR babies, designer babies. You want a six-fingered child so he can be one of those special pianists? Who saw Gattaca, man? Right? Oh, and that, yes, yes. All of the hipsters from LA, San Diego, San Francisco moving to Mexico City so they can actually afford to live on the salaries they get paid doing remote work. Ain't that a bitch? Ain't that a bitch? Oh man. Um, Not James. And truth is America is still one of the best nations in the world. Okay, we have what other countries do not. We have space. We do have at least an illusion of freedom for a little bit longer. We still have a certain amount of choice that still exists. However limited, we still have more choice than what we see in an awful lot of other countries. And of course, part of that is because we are willing to conform to certain behaviors in order to maintain the luxuries of the capital. And unfortunately, that sometimes means that we send people off to kill other people in other nations to steal their resources. Yeah, we do that. Not proud of it. I've been part of it. You know, rare earth minerals in Afghanistan. We facilitated giving to China so that they could then create the technology that we continue to depend on here in the United States in order to communicate and be part of this society, part of this heteronormative culture that is the failing empire, the fall of capitalism, the fall of Rome. Yeah. Thailand next. Catholic, tubal ligation. And that's one of those things. And it's one of the ironies of the communities that we live in America. The reason why is because some of the places where the communities have a taboo against using birth control. And we actually have strong Catholic communities with such a taboo against birth control that pregnancy is almost inevitable. And these are the communities where you see a significant amount of the abortions occurring because bringing a child into the world that you can't feed is a big issue for an awful lot of these young women, these young couples. Yeah, we won't tell anybody either there, James. You keep doing you. That's an hour, folks. It's been a fantastic conversation. I love you. Remember, keep your spirits up. Okay? Take time to learn. Go out and do something. Meet your neighbors. Invite them to the barbecue. Share while you still have something to share. Because someday you may need them to share something they got. Learn a new skill. Learn a new skill that will work for you. in whatever comes after the America of today. Think for yourselves, folks. Enlightened choice. You can save the future. Family, friends, community. As long as you got those three, you can make anything happen. See you at the big luau.